You wouldn't believe what happened when I opened my stepson's wedding invitation and realized my name wasn't on it. Before I share what happened next, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It started small, like it always does. A dish left in the sink when I'd just cleaned the kitchen. Socks dropped in the hallway like someone else would sweep them up. Little things that most stepmothers might overlook, especially if the boy is still a teenager. But Daniel wasn't a teenager. He was 23. I married his father, Greg, when Daniel was 15. By then, I'd already raised 2 kids on my own, both girls, both grown now. I knew what teenage boys could be like. I wasn't looking to replace his mom or force a bond that wasn't there. I just wanted to build a peaceful home with Greg. A second chance for both of us. But Daniel made it clear from day one. I was not family. Not really. He didn't say it out loud. Not at first. But his eyes said it. The way he watched me fold his laundry without a thank you, the way he talked around me at the dinner table like I was invisible, the way he'd ask Greg to make him a sandwich even if I was already in the kitchen, wearing an apron, cutting up bread. Still, I tried. I packed his lunches during his senior year. Ironed his shirts for job interviews. Drove him to the DMV when his car broke down and waited in that freezing line with him for 2 hours. Greg, of course, thought things were fine. He's just quiet, he'd say. He's not a big talker. But Daniel had no problem talking to his dad. Or to his friends. Or to any woman who wasn't me. In fact, once I overheard him on the phone saying, "Yeah, she's just my dad's wife. She cleans and stuff." Like I was the maid. I'll never forget that. I was dusting the hallway bookshelf when he said it. Door cracked just wide enough for the words to float out and hit me square in the chest. I didn't say anything. Just went back to wiping down photo frames no one ever looked at. I should have said something. Drawn a line. But at the time, I thought patience was strength. I thought love meant service. That if I just kept showing up, with warm meals and folded towels and clean counters, eventually, he'd see me. Not as his mom, but as someone who deserved kindness. Instead, he treated me like background noise. And when I started my new job at the local library, he barely noticed. No, congrats, no, how was your first day? Just more dishes in the sink, more towels on the floor, more silence unless he needed something. There was one moment though. One evening when I thought maybe the tide was turning. It was a stormy Tuesday. Rain smacked the windows, and Greg was out of town for a work retreat. Daniel came home soaked, his jacket sticking to his back like a second skin. I offered him a towel. He didn't say thank you, but he did sit down at the kitchen table. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup. The kind with heavy cream and cracked black pepper, the way my girls used to love it. He ate it all. In silence, yes, but with something softer in his eyes. I didn't know tomato soup could taste like this, he said, almost under his breath. I smiled. It's just a little garlic butter. He didn't say anything else. But the next morning, he left his bowl in the dishwasher, not the sink. And I thought maybe he's starting to see me. But hope is a dangerous thing, especially when it blinds you to patterns that never really change. Because just 3 weeks later, I found myself scrubbing cake frosting off his bedroom carpet. From a party I hadn't been told about. While he sat on the couch downstairs, laughing with his friends. I was the cleanup crew. Again. I went upstairs and closed the door to my room. And I cried. Not because of the carpet. But because of the way Greg brushed it off. Boys will be boys, he said. It's just a phase. He's getting older. He'll grow out of it. But what Greg didn't understand was that I wasn't waiting for Daniel to grow out of it. I was shrinking. Disappearing. Slowly becoming the unpaid housekeeper in my own home. Then came the wedding announcement. It arrived in a crisp white envelope, sealed with gold trim. Elegant, classic. Daniel always had a thing for appearances. Greg opened it while we were watching a documentary about sea turtles. I remember that because the narrator's voice was so calm, so peaceful, right as my husband's eyebrows pinched together. He said. What is it? He handed me the invitation. There it was. Daniel and his fiancée's names in embossed script. The venue, a fancy estate on the outskirts of town. Black tie preferred. Guests of honor listed in neat little lines. And nowhere was my name. Greg's was there, of course. Father of the groom. A +1 too. But not me. Not even a Greg and guest. Just Greg. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they forgot, I said, voice too high, too hopeful. Greg called Daniel. I stood in the hallway, pressing my ear to the frame of the door as Greg asked, casually, "Hey, bud, just got the invite. Looks beautiful. Quick thing, you didn't include Ruth. Was that on purpose?" Silence. Then, yeah, we figured it'd be simpler. Mom's gonna be there. We didn't want things to be weird. Weird. That word slammed into my gut like a steel door. I wasn't family. I wasn't even furniture. I was clutter. An inconvenience to be left off the list for the sake of simplicity. Greg mumbled something. Tried to smooth it over. But I walked away before the call ended. My hands were shaking. My heart was doing that tight, angry flutter. Like 1,000 little birds trying to escape. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that stupid envelope, wondering when I'd let myself become invisible. And that was the moment I decided I wasn't going to that wedding. Not as Greg's +1. Not as the maid. Not as anything. But I wasn't done either. Because Daniel might have written me out of the guest list, but he forgot one important thing. I had a story of my own. And the next chapter? Let's just say it would make him remember me. For the next few days, the house moved around me like nothing had happened. Greg avoided the topic the way he always did when conflict made him uncomfortable. Every morning, he kissed my cheek before work and said, "We'll talk soon," like soon was a place you could keep pushing farther down the road. Daniel moved through the house with his usual careless confidence. Doors opened and shut. Showers ran too long. Plates stacked in the sink like quiet demands. And this time, I didn't touch them. On the third morning, Greg noticed. "Did the dishwasher break?" he asked, glancing at the mess. "No," I said calmly. "I just didn't run it." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You feeling okay?" "I'm feeling aware," I replied. The word hung in the kitchen between us while the coffee maker hissed and dripped. He didn't push it. Daniel noticed too. By the fourth day, he stood in front of the sink, staring at the dried cereal stuck to his bowl like it was a personal insult. "Are you not doing dishes anymore?" he asked from the doorway. "I never said that," I answered softly, folding laundry on the couch. "I just won't be doing yours." He blinked. "That's ridiculous." "So is being treated like the help," I said, still not looking up. He rolled his eyes and grabbed a sponge like it personally offended him. It was the first time I'd ever seen him clean up after himself in this house. And for the first time in years, something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a quiet reclaiming of space. That afternoon, my daughter Lily came over. She's 27, sharp as a tack, never afraid to say things that make people uncomfortable. She took one look at my face and knew something was off. "Okay," she said, setting her purse down. "Whose feelings did you swallow this time?" I handed her the wedding invitation. She read it once. Then again. Her jaw tightened. "They forgot you?" "They didn't forget," I said. "They chose." Her mouth fell open. "After everything you've done for that boy?" "For years," I replied. She stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "That's insane. That's actually insane." I almost laughed. "It's just their wedding. I'll survive." She crouched in front of me and took my hands. "Mom, no. This is not small. This is erasure." The word stung because it was true. That evening, Greg finally tried to fix it. He sat beside me on the couch while the evening news droned in the background. The light from the television flickered across his face. "Daniel didn't mean it the way it sounded," he said carefully. "He just didn't want conflict with his mom." "And so the solution was to erase me," I replied. "He said you'd understand." I turned to him slowly. After 8 years of cooking his meals, washing his clothes, paying his therapy copays when he dropped out of college the first time, he thought I'd understand being excluded from his wedding? Greg rubbed his forehead. "You're taking this personally." "I am personal," I said quietly. "I'm not a service." Silence swallowed the room. He didn't argue back. And that hurt almost as much. Over the next few weeks, The wedding planning took over the house like a slow invasion. Daniel's fiancée, Kayla, came by twice with notebooks and Pinterest boards and lists of things she needed Greg's help with. She was polite to me. Not cruel, but distant. Like a receptionist who doesn't know your name. Once, she asked, "Will you be working that weekend?" Working. Not coming. Not attending. I smiled faintly. Yes, I will. And I did mean that. Because that week, I picked up every extra shift my library manager would give me. Story hour. Evening returns. Weekend sorting. I stayed busy on purpose. Not to avoid the pain, but to repurpose it. Financially, I was not the kind of woman who could afford to disappear quietly. For years, I'd helped cover Daniel's expenses when Greg's business dipped. Car insurance. Community college tuition. Even part of his engagement ring deposit after he maxed out his credit card on a bachelor trip. I had never made a fuss about it. Never asked for credit. But generosity without respect eventually turns into quiet self-betrayal. One evening, while filing documents at the library, I stumbled across an old receipt folder in my bag. I hadn't looked at it in years. Inside were copies of checks and transfers I'd made on Daniel's behalf. Thousands of dollars over time. I sat there at the back desk under fluorescent light, listening to the low hum of the air vent, and something in my chest tightened with clarity. Daniel didn't just see me as invisible. He had built his adult life on my silence. Flashbacks came rushing back in pieces. Him asking me for help with rent when his roommate bailed. Me quietly transferring money so he wouldn't be evicted. Him never saying thank you, just, "You can tell Dad it was from both of you." And I had let him. Because I thought love meant being quiet. That night, when I got home, the living room was filled with wedding catalogs. Greg was sitting with Daniel and Kayla at the kitchen island. They were laughing. Really laughing. Like I wasn't standing there. Then Daniel looked up and said, "Hey, since you're not going to the wedding, do you mind handling the dogs that weekend too? Kayla's parents are allergic and Dad will be gone." The room went still. Kayla froze. Greg shifted uncomfortably. Daniel didn't even realize what he'd just said. That sentence, that casual assumption, landed harder than the missing invitation ever had. Something in me hardened into steel. I set my bag down. "No," I said simply. Daniel blinked. "No, no," I repeated. "I won't be doing that." He scoffed. "Why not? You're free." I looked him straight in the eye for the first time in years. "I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your maid. And I'm not your invisible labor." His face flushed. "You're overreacting." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm finally reacting appropriately." The room stayed silent. Greg opened his mouth, then closed it. Kayla looked from Daniel to me, uncertainty flickering in her eyes for the first time. And for the first time ever, Daniel looked uncomfortable in my presence. Later that night, Greg tried to soften it. "He didn't mean to insult you," he said. "But he did," I answered. "And now he will live with the discomfort of hearing the word no." Because somewhere along the years of quiet service, I had forgotten something vital. Silence teaches people how to treat you. And I was done teaching the wrong lesson. The next morning, I packed a suitcase. Not because I was leaving Greg. Not yet. But because I needed air, a pause, a room where I didn't have to walk around eggshells shaped like Daniel's entitlement and Greg's silence. Lily offered her spare room before I even finished asking. "Come stay a few nights, Mom," she said. "Let them sit in their own mess for once." So I did. And for the first time in years, I woke up in a space where no one expected me to refill a dishwasher, restock the paper towels, or fix someone else's crisis before pouring my own coffee. Lily made me breakfast. Bacon, eggs, coffee so strong it could wake the dead. We sat on her tiny balcony with mismatched mugs and talked like two grown women, not mother and daughter, just survivors comparing notes. I keep thinking about all the little things I said, watching the sunlight flicker through a dying pothose plant. How I'd leave Daniel notes with job postings, cook his favorite meals, remember how he liked his laundry sorted. Lily raised an eyebrow. "He didn't even know how you liked your coffee." That landed harder than I expected. Because it was true. Greg called me on the second day. "I'm sorry," he said. "About everything." "Sorry about what?" I asked. "You'll have to be specific." He sighed. About Daniel. About how I let things go too long. About not standing up for you. That last one came out low, like it cost him something to say. I love you, he added. I know, I replied. He paused. Are you coming back? I'm not sure yet. Because here's the thing. Love on its own isn't enough. Not when respect is missing. The wedding was 2 weeks away. Plans were accelerating. Vendors were booked. RSVPs were closed. But my soft revenge had already begun, not with pettiness, not with sabotage, but with truth. I went home the following weekend. Calm. Steady. Not for Greg. Not for Daniel. For myself. Greg tried to be better. He cleared his dishes. Asked me how my day was. Said thank you after dinner, like he'd realized the foundation was cracking and only now understood what kept the house upright. Daniel? Daniel avoided me. Kayla came by less often. When she did, she looked nervous around me. Once, while Greg and Daniel were discussing flower arrangements, she quietly approached me in the hallway. I heard what happened, she said softly. I met her eyes. You'll need to be more specific. The dogs, she said. And the invitation. I waited. I didn't realize. I thought Greg handled everything. I nodded. That's usually how I'm erased, through delegation. She flushed. I didn't mean to disrespect you. But you did, I said. And now you know. To her credit, she didn't get defensive. She just nodded, eyes wide. Later that night, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. Hey Ruth, it's Kayla. Can I ask you something privately? I stared at it for a long time. Curiosity won. Me, sure. She replied almost instantly. Kayla, did you really pay for Daniel's second year at community college? Me, yes. Kayla, and his credit card consolidation loan? Me, yes. There was a long pause. Kayla, did he ever, thank you? I didn't respond. Because if you have to ask that question, you already know the answer. The next day, something unexpected happened. Greg handed me a new envelope. This came from Kayla's parents, he said, confused. Addressed just to you. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal printed invitation. Same style, same venue. But this time, my name was printed in gold script at the top. To Ruth Taylor, with gratitude. No +1. No guest of. Just me. I stared at it for a long time. Greg was watching me. She did this without Daniel, he said quietly. I nodded. I didn't say if I'd go. But I did make a decision that night. I pulled out the receipt folder from my drawer. I scanned every document. Every transfer. Every time-stamped record of a woman who gave quietly while a young man took without noticing. Then I sent it all in a PDF to Greg. No message. Just the file. He didn't reply. But 2 hours later, I heard his office door slam shut. The next morning, Daniel was gone. He didn't come back for 3 days. When he did, he walked into the kitchen while I was wiping down the counter. He didn't say hello. Just stood there awkwardly. I saw the documents, he mumbled. I kept wiping. I didn't realize you'd done all that. Because you never looked, I replied calmly. He rubbed the back of his neck. I was a kid. You were 20. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally whispered, thank you. I didn't answer. Because forgiveness isn't owed just because someone finally says the words. You're not coming to the wedding, are you? He asked. I haven't decided, I said. It's not really my celebration, is it? He nodded slowly. I didn't get it. I do now. Sort of. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't cruel. He was entitled. Raised in a house where women folded themselves in the name of harmony, and men believed that silence meant support. I hope you treat Kayla better than you treated me, I said quietly. Because if you don't, she'll find the strength I had to grow into. He nodded again, then left. And that was the first honest conversation we'd ever had. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly. No chaos in my house. No frantic hairstyling. No rushed ironing. No voices calling for lost cufflinks or emergency safety pins. Just soft sunlight through the kitchen window and the steady hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in 8 years, I was completely unneeded. And strangely, I didn't feel empty. I made coffee for myself alone. Dark roast. 2 sugars. Exactly how I liked it, not how anyone else preferred it. I stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, sipping slowly, watching steam rise and dissolve into the quiet air. Greg left just before noon. He stood awkwardly at the door in his press suit, adjusting his tie like he didn't quite know how to face me. "I don't know what today is supposed to look like anymore," he said. "You don't have to," I replied calmly. "It's Daniel's day. Let it be his." He hesitated. "I was wrong, Ruth. About a lot of things." "I know," I said. "That's why it hurts." Then he left. No promises. No dramatic confessions. Just truth sitting heavy between us for the first time in years. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. "Kayla, you were never the maid. You were the only adult in that house. I'm so sorry it took me this long to see it." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. "Me, thank you for saying that. Treat each other better than the models you were given." No bitterness. No lecture. Just truth. I didn't go to the wedding. Instead, I went to the library. It was quiet that afternoon. The kind of deep, clean silence that makes your thoughts sound louder. Dust floated in sunbeams between the shelves. The scent of old paper wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I worked the returns desk. Sorted books. Smiled at strangers. I had never felt more grounded in my life. That evening, Lily came over with takeout and 2 bottles of sparkling cider. "Okay," she said, dropping onto the couch. "Tell me everything." "There's nothing dramatic to tell," I replied. "And that's kind of the point." She studied me. "You look lighter." "I am. Because closure doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in the form of stillness." Later that night, Greg came home alone. No photos on his phone. No stories about speeches or dances. He sat at the edge of the bed like he didn't know which side of the room he belonged to anymore. "It was beautiful," he said quietly. "They're married now." "I hope they're kind to each other," I replied. He swallowed. "Daniel asked about you." "Again." "And what did you say?" He looked at his hands. "That you weren't invisible anymore." Something in my chest loosened, just a little. Weeks passed. The house stayed different. Greg cooked for himself. Did his own laundry. Spoke to me with intention instead of assumption. Respect, the kind that shows up in actions, not words. Daniel started texting me occasionally. Awkward messages. Small updates. "Daniel, Kayla liked the soup recipe you used to make." "Daniel, I fixed the sink in the new apartment. Thought you'd be proud." "Daniel, I'm trying to do better." I never responded too fast. Growth should not be rushed by guilt. Then one rainy afternoon, a small envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note. "Ruth. I used to believe strength meant being loud, dominant, unquestioned. Now I know it looks a lot like quiet endurance and knowing when to stop giving yourself away. Thank you for teaching me what no one else did, even when I didn't deserve it. Daniel." No apology can rewrite the past. But sometimes it can open the door to a truer future. One evening, months later, Greg sat beside me at the kitchen table. "I don't want to lose you because I was too comfortable to change," he said. I studied his face. Older, gentler, stripped of excuses. "Comfort is dangerous," I said quietly. "It teaches people to stop paying attention." He nodded. "Then teach me how to look again." And for the first time in a long time, I believed he meant it. I kept my job at the library, picked up more hours, built my own savings, took a pottery class on Wednesday nights just because I wanted to. I bought myself flowers once a week. I stopped living as the background character in my own home. Last week, Kayla invited me to lunch, just the 2 of us. "I won't erase what happened," she said. "But I won't repeat it either." "That's how cycles break," I replied. She smiled faintly. "I think you saved me without even trying." And maybe that was the softest revenge of all. Not exposing Daniel publicly. Not humiliating him. Not tearing the family apart. But becoming impossible to erase ever again. My stepson once treated me like a maid. So when his wedding forgot me, I remembered myself. And that was the moment I stopped cleaning up after everyone's emotional mess and finally started living in peace of my own making.